All right.
Hi, welcome to Pod 366, a Weird Movies podcast. I am Greg Swally, and I'm joined today by the first time co-hosting by Penguin Pete Trbovich. He's been a writer for our site for 7 years, I would say. Probably started in 2016.
That would be maybe earlier than that, actually. But yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah, and he runs a couple of cannabis-based websites, which we will discuss a little.
Um,
All right.
yeah. Well, I'm a freelance writer, so I work. There's your site. I have a gig at dabconnection.com, and that's my biggest one. But I don't own it. It's just a gig, just like you. And so I work for.
Do you run their social media though?
I'm basically the site editor at this point. I have like 8 to 10 authors under me now, and I'm basically I run the whole business, and the client cashes the checks and pays me out once a month. So
Also is involved with, I believe, writing I'm not sure what you would call Average Joe in the California Inscape, a radio play, a serial, something like that, but you're involved with that with our friend Giles Edwards.
yes, yeah, that's a side passion project. It's an audio drama. We could call it that, and it's kind of comedy, kind of horror, and it's basically it's Dragnet meets Ghostbusters. It's a 1940s hard-boiled detective teamed up with a witch, and together they solve occult crimes. But it's played for laughs. It's We try not to make it the occult Rick and Morty, but some of that humor may creep in.
And
So
I want to say that's available on the SoundCloud on the same account that hosts this podcast, which is the.
oh, is it now? Okay, yes. All
We
right.
we moved over there to host these because we ran out of free space. So, all right, we are going to talk
For
about the new movie releases as quick as we can. Neither one of us have seen very many of these, so it's not going to be uh, an in-depth discussion. Let's see. Can you see that, Pete?
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that is from,
That would be the first one.
yeah, that is Zoo, Warriors of the Magic Mountain. And
Yep.
that is do you have the date on that? I don't have it up.
I believe it was 1983.
Let me bring,
And I know it's an established it's an established cult film. I'd say a decent apocrypha contender. I've seen some of it on archive.org. I didn't watch it all the way through, but in a nutshell, I can definitely say that this inspired, as they say, John Carpenter to make Big Trouble in Little China. And I can see that in almost every frame. It has the exact same loopy, out of control plot logic. It's got the same monster per minute, one crazy character after another popping out. It's got mysticism and supernatural elements in this warrior motif with clashing armies. So it's set in that period of warring samurai and stuff. It's really goofy fun. Um, I would not call it an intellectual movie, but it's definitely a throw your brain away and enjoy the ride for 90 minutes. It's fun.
yeah, this is a movie that it's one of Choi Hawk, whose name is spelled Tsuihark. It's one of his first movies that he directed. He produced a lot of movies. It is kind of picking up where the Shaw brothers at this point are kind of tailing off. And in Hong Kong, a new breed, a new wave is taking over, and he's in the vanguard of this new wave that's taking over
Huh.
the Kung Fu productions. And Jackie Chan is rising, stars rising right now, and Hong Kong is really exciting at this point. And Choi Hawk is right there leading the charge. I haven't seen it, but it's sort of like from what I've seen, the clips and so forth, it's sort of like Shaw Brothers on steroids. You know, they're going crazy with all sorts of sort of Empire Strikes Back inspired special effects combined with traditional kung fu and a lot of wire fu guys jumping, just ridiculous.
Wire fu, yes.
It should be. That's out on Blu-ray now for the first time. Should be fun. We do have another Choi Hawk movie from 1993. Green Snake is in the apocryphally weird movie list, and that's a little bit strange. So let's check out this next one, which is a title that I think neither of us really have very much to say about, because it really hasn't been seen very much by anyone. Love on the Ground is a Jacques Rivette film from, it's another one from, I think it's from 84, so about the same period. Yeah, 84. It's sort of a meta-theatrical thing about an audience that goes to see a play, and then the guy who's there convinces the actors to act in another play. And while they're acting in that play at his house, they start having visions of some sort of tragedy that happened many years ago, and they start to incorporate their visions into the new play, and so forth and so on. It's kind of considered by some to be a sort of an unofficial sequel or a spiritual sequel to Celine and Julie Go Boating. And it's really, there's not much information available out on it. It hasn't been seen very often. Pete, do you know anything about this movie at all?
Nothing beyond what I could find on Wikipedia on that. Sorry. It does have the way they're describing it. It does have it's got kind of a postmodernism to it. French New Wave, not so much, but it kind of reminds me of movies like, just from what they're describing. I have to see it, and I might be wrong when I do see it, but it kind of brings me to mind of movies like Holy Motors. I recently saw that one, and maybe a bit of Fellini-esque kind of aspirations to it. But again, I'm pulling this completely out of my ears, so I do want to see it, though, because that does look interesting.
I will say Giles Edwards is a big fan of Jacques Rivette, as is L. Rob Hubbard.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's too much there.
Those two guys might decide to write on that if we get lucky. That's from Cohen Film Group. Puts out some good stuff. They were just bought, I think, by Kino. But they keep their own imprint label. So that's something to look for if you like your art house films. Let's see, next one. Okay, my goodness. So this is called Deadly Lust. It used to be called Memento Mori, which you can still see down there. It's a 2018 kind of arty exploitation film from Belgium that nobody saw when it first came out. And now, so they retitled it and put it out on Blu-ray. It's about a young woman who replaying the events of some sort of surreal tragedy in her head that happened at a pool party. If you watch the trailer, you will see lots of young people partying. And if you look at the cover, I think you can see how they're pitching it, what the appeal is. The trailer did describe it as Lynchian. You can see the trailer on 366weirdmovies.com.
I had a little, yeah. When it says Lynchian, that's kind of That's to my mind, we really shouldn't be describing movies as Lynchian anymore because we kind of wore that one out. So, and these days that's popped off about every movie that has non-continuity and some dream sequences in it. So, um, the way they're describing this one, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Happy Death Day, with a recurring nightmare, and a woman has to figure out a sequence of how this thing happened, with some kind of ticking clock, I guess. But it's existential, with this way that she keeps going back through it again. I guess it's recurring. But again, I haven't seen this one either. But
Wow.
I did look at some reviews.
Nobody's seen it, so
Yeah.
it's popped up. I think I just saw the synopsis and said, okay, this is a weird movie for sure. May not be a good movie. I'm guessing it isn't, but definitely a weird movie. So those are 3 Blu-ray releases this week. There's nothing in theaters, but there is one note that popped up late that I thought we'd discuss, which is this little still. Do you know what that is, Pete?
Not off the top, no.
All right. So this is Rachel Weisz as the Mantle Twins. It is
Okay.
from Dead Ringers. They are remaking Dead Ringers as a 6-episode miniseries. David Cronenberg's Dead Ringers is a 6-episode miniseries on Amazon Prime. Obviously, they've gender switched the lead, which I hope is not a problem because a big part of the main movie was the idea that these two were sexual predators. So they better be lesbians or this isn't going to work. They are twin gynecologists who get into some trouble, have a very symbiotic relationship. There's drug abuse. There's sleeping with their patients. In Cronenberg's hand, it's very arty. It could end up being very trashy. Don't know.
All right. Yeah, that sounds right up Cronenberg's alley, and I love the hedonism angle there. Yeah, gender swapping. That's a big thing these days. You may have heard a lot. That reminds me that there's a lot of hubbub out there right now about reimagining characters. They've been recasting some movies lately, swapping people's races or genders or orientations, and then there's backlash against that for the people who hate that for being too woke. Yeah. So, and there's kind of a line you have to walk there. You can't be so off in the weeds with it that you tick people off. Like if you've seen the fallout about Velma lately, that's the Scooby-Doo series. Yeah, exactly. There's been a whole lot of fallout about Velma and how it just they went a little too far to the point where it's pandering to the woke audience in such a self-conscious way that it completely ruins the original narrative. Now, I think it's possible to do woke without making a movie unpalatable. So there's that. But, yeah.
It's also possible to switch the gender of the main character without making it woke. I mean, you could explore a lot of different ideas simply by turning a male into a female, without doing it just to be, forcing some diversity on it. But that's that. Let's go back to just normal conversation. All right. So
can we circle back to Big Trouble in Little China for a second?
Sure. Go ahead. We're in free space.
Yeah, Harlan Ellison. I remember I showed you this. This is Harlan Ellison's Watching, and this is a compendium of all of Ellison's, the late Harlan Ellison, science fiction author and author of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, very popular video game still to this day. And the movie was certainly a cult following and one of our 366 Weird selections, A Boy and His Dog. So Harlan Ellison also did a whole several years worth of film criticism and film critique columns for the Los Angeles Free Press, and he has a paragraph in here about Big Trouble in Little China as well. He basically slathered it with praise. Let's see here. Some of the funniest lines spoken by any actor this year to produce a cheerfully blathering live-action cartoon that will give you release from the real pressures of your basically dreary lives. And I thought that's such an apt description of that movie and also the Wuxia movies that inspired it. So I just wanted to share that a little bit. There really isn't a lot in there, but that's John Carpenter. And apparently there was a hassle with the screen credits with the Writers Guild of America when Big Trouble in Little China came out. And there was some hubbub there with the WGA trying to sort that out. That would have come out back in, what year would that have been? That was the mid-'80s. That was December 1986. So, yeah. Anyway, okay, that's my little bookshelf contribution.
There you go. Actually, speaking of bookshelves, behind you, I see you have a couple of our yearbooks prominently.
Oh, yeah.
There, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you've got one, too. These are the only two I have left because my kids actually have a few of them, too. My youngest daughter said that she wanted to see my name in a book, no matter what, because she's been trying to explain to her friends for 20 years what I do for a living, and I write online. But, well, what books has your dad written? Well, he doesn't know. So I just want to see your name in a dang book. Any book, Dad. So I sent her a couple copies of those when I got them.
We qualify as a book.
Yeah.
There are also a couple of penguins behind you, and so now it's time to ask the question. You introduce yourself as Penguin Pete. You go online as Penguin Pete. Why penguins?
Well, I got my start out in computing in the geek techie era. I'm a Generation X guy from the 90s, so I kind of rode that early wave of the web and technology, and I ended up at Citigroup at their headquarters at the bank, Citigroup, the payment processing headquarters. This is the big nerve center. There's only two of those locations in the United States, and there was one in Las Vegas. And that's how I ended up in Las Vegas for 5 years, and I hated it, but the job was great. I ended up there for Y2K. I was on actually the team that was keeping the code maintained right up until midnight, and they required us to be there on New Year's Eve Y2K. So if I'd known that had happened, I still have some memorabilia from that event. For one thing, I never cashed the bonus $100 little coupon they gave me for that. But anyway, so yeah, we were there maintaining the computers, make sure that nothing broke. And of course, I was the Linux guy. If anybody out there is familiar with the Linux operating system, it's also the basis for Google's Chrome, by the way, on tablets now. But the mascot of Linux is a character called Tux the Penguin. So that's how I got the nickname Penguin Pete, and it just stuck with me. When I started out in 2006 on my website, penguinpetes.com, it was all about Linux. It was all about Linux, open source software, programming, web design, some graphic design tutorials. I actually did end up accidentally getting cited in a couple of obscure places for things like exploring the early Plan 9 from Bell Labs operating system, which was produced by Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie, the same guys who originally created Unix, which is also what Linux is based on. Free and open source software. I was also goofing around with QBasic programming language, and I could still run that in a DOS terminal. So I had some code that I shared that way. I'm actually cited in Bash documentation somehow. So yeah, in the Linux community, there's also a webcomic that I did about programming in Linux geeks in general, and that ran for 5 years. It was syndicated in the Linux Journal. So I'm still kind of quasi-famous there in little circles there, and it stuck.
All right.
And Pete is easier to remember for people rather than Pete Trbovich. So my last name rhymes with Weird Al Yankovic, and it's a Yugoslavian surname, which would have been much easier to explain back before there was no longer Yugoslavia after the Kosovo incident. So anyway, that's just if people have a hard time struggling with my last name, I just tell them Penguin Pete. That's it.
There you go. By the way, have you seen the movie Underground?
Just Underground?
Yeah, by Yugoslav. It's a Yugoslavian. Well, anyway, the movie is essentially a lot of it. It's bookended with a lament about the dissolution of Yugoslavia.
Yeah, and the fragmentation into Bosnia Herzegovina, and I'm trying to remember them all now.
Right.
Yes, Bosnia Herzegovina, Croatia, Serbia. So yeah, but it's just Slavic. They're really all Slavs. They redraw the borders every few decades, but it's all the Slavs.
We have a few minutes. It's hard to tell how much. I think we might have up to 10 minutes left. I'm not sure. But since you are writing cannabis stuff, I thought we would discuss the sort of, although it's legally touchy, the sort of intersection of cannabis and weird movies. Why? I think that there's a lot of crossover interest. What do you think it is about cannabis that enhances the movie watching experience, and then specifically the weird movie watching experience?
Well, that's a curveball. Okay, cannabis actually does. Okay, let me back up a bit. Cannabis, as we know, it's the plant that grows out of the ground. It's got 100 different cannabinoids in it. And the main one is THC. That's the one that everybody's familiar with, but there's a bunch of different ones. THC works by plugging into the endocannabinoid system, and one of the effects that it has is that increases dopamine flow and other neurotransmitters in the brain, right? And what dopamine is there for, and other neurotransmitters, these are biological signals in your brain that are there to program you to do things in order to survive. So when you're hungry and you eat, and then you feel satiated and content, that's dopamine flooding your brain saying, good boy, you didn't starve to death today. And the same thing kicks in for just about every other biological process you can name. So what cannabis does, it enhances that. That's why people get munchies, because it just makes food taste better. It can make all kinds of things feel better. If something's good, it'll just feel a little bit better on cannabis. At the same time, there's too much brain fog from being too stoned, so that can make it harder to keep track of a movie's plot and threads and stuff. But it can certainly enhance the enjoyment to a certain extent. But you understand, the main pitch of dabconnection.com is responsibility, responsible use, harm reduction, and consumer advocacy, because it was started about 4 or 5 years ago, right before COVID hit. There was a big epidemic of vape cartridges. Vape cartridges, that's these. This is not a suspect, but there were black market versions of these vape cartridges running around. And you take this and you screw it into a battery, and it's got a distillate of cannabis oil in there, and then you inhale off that. So there were black market versions of those going around that were cut with a harmful substance that we now know as vitamin E acetate. And that was killing people. There were about 64 deaths from it, thousands hospitalized, some kids as young as 15 dying from this. So with the black market going around and such convincing fakes of known brands being printed out there, there's Chinese vape cartridge manufacturers that put these out for pennies on the dollar. So, and we started the site out of self-defense for the cannabis community. We figure people are going to be vaping this stuff and smoking this stuff and eating the edibles, and there are people who need this for medical reasons. It helps with stress, chronic pain, PTSD, depression, anxiety, the list goes on, especially CBD. Another cannabinoid helps with those a lot. So if people are going to do that, we started this to help people understand the difference between fake and real, and understand the importance of getting their supply from a licensed dispensary in a legal state. So anyway, we do a lot of reviews of products. So we talk about the same stuff that sites like Rolling Stone publishes the occasional thing. MaryJane.com does a lot of that. There's High Times magazine. So we talk about that too. But we talk about more keeping the cannabis industry on its toes and accountable, and helping connect people who are curious as first timers with what this can and can't do for you, and get the facts straight on a lot of this stuff. So sorry, I just wanted to clear that up and say this isn't just about, that's kind of a high times type topic. Which movies? I've done a list of those, by the way, on the site. So I've got a list of movies that I recommend for stoners.
Oh, on Dab.Connection.
Yeah, Dab Connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually done a few movie lists. So of course I go with anything that's a comedy, anything lightweight. Horror, I don't recommend too much on cannabis, because that can give some people an anxiety attack. Some people they get worse, especially in THC. So there's that. But on the other hand, I don't really go for Cheech and Chong type stuff. That's so stereotypical, and it's so, I know we're old, but boomer. It's so boomer. It's so back there in the boomer era where we really don't need to be goofy and immature about that. I'm more about cannabis goes to work. Cannabis is for working people now. Anyway, okay, that's my soapbox. I'll climb down.
I'm going to tell you a movie that I'm 100% certain you recommended for cannabis. Nothing But Trouble. Okay. Right?
That just had an anniversary recently. Yeah.
Biggest fan of Nothing But Trouble on the planet, probably. He hounded us to include it in the list of.
Yes.
It belongs there, but you were the big proponent of it.
Yeah, based on, and really, I'm not out to say that it's the world's greatest movie. It's not. It's only in my top 10 favorites, but it's obviously flawed, and it's flawed because the director there, Dan Aykroyd, really bit off way more than he could chew. It was his first time directing, and along with, he was already producing, writing, and he played 2 roles. Both of them were heavily makeup costume roles. One was the judge himself, Judge Valkenizer, and the other one was one of the deformed babies in the junkyard, Dapple or Dappy, whatever. So he had to direct and produce this movie while sometimes dressed like a giant rubber baby. And, I think that gives him meaningful effort, at least.
I wish I had stills set up ready to go for that, but I didn't know we were going to mention that. So
nah, it's predictable.
There is we're running low on time. There is one question we like to ask our guests, and you're not a guest, being a co-host, but we're still going to ask you it, which is what's your hometown, and can you recommend a restaurant there?
Yeah. Well, my hometown is Des Moines, Iowa. Party City. Let me tell you, no. Actually, no. Des Moines is the capital of Iowa, so it has something of a downtown scene. I'm going to pick a random one and say Fong's Pizza is pretty unique, and it's downtown on 4th Street in downtown Des Moines. And Fong's Pizza, as the name would suggest, takes an Asian bend towards pizza. And I know you're probably thinking chop suey on pizza. No, it's not quite like that. But it really is a unique dining experience to try it one time. It's also hugely popular with locals.
Wow.
So there's that, at least.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So it's like let's see, would they have noodles on pizza?
Nope.
Nope.
Let's see here. When I was there, they have like a combination of, like, you could get egg rolls with and some Asian dishes, rice and stuff with. But then the pizzas, there was a pizza that was very vegetarian, like it had broccoli and stuff. But they pulled this off. You had the canonical pineapple on pizza. There was one that was they just do unique stuff. I can't remember what all, but
Sounds good.
they do some unexpected stuff that you wouldn't think of on a pizza until you try it, and then it makes perfect sense.
Well, if I'm in Des Moines, I know what I'm doing. So that is we're gonna wrap it up for today. Went by fast, didn't it?
Yep, did.
Next week, Giles will be back. Giles Edwards, if you don't know, and we're going to have our guest is going to be a artificial intelligence chatbot, and we'll see what they know about weird movies. Probably nothing. We're hoping for some crazy answers, though.
I'm sure. Would that be Chat GPT by any chance?
What's that?
Chat GPT by any chance?
No, a cut rate competitor.
Oh, okay. There are dozens of them out there. In fact, I've programmed a few. Not any that you've heard of, but I mean, I dabbled in that. Yeah, that's definitely overblown. But anyway, that's interesting. It's probably better off I'm not on the artificial intelligence episode. It's a very blood pressure raising topic with me.
Well,
okay.
We'll be back in the future, and as a matter of fact, at some point we're going to have Giles and Pete on without me so that I can take a break. But for now,
that would be fun.
But for now, we're going to just sign off. I do have one last thing to do. Let's see if I can get this out. I don't want to. There we go. Just wanted to sign off with that.
Sure.
Didn't want to bring everybody down, but we did want to mention that passing. So it's very sad for us, but we're very happy to have so much of his stuff up on the site. So
I really came into the site. That was one of my first things that I read on the site before I even started writing for you was Albert Eaker's Fringe Cinema. And I really loved his takes on movies. He had a really broad knowledge. I admire that. So he knew his stuff and just had a talent for finding the weird pulse and everything.
Yep. So that will do it for today. Thank you, Pete, and we'll be back tomorrow or next week, not tomorrow.
Next week.
So this is 366. Greg Smalley signing off for Pete Trbovich. Bye-bye, everyone.
All right. Thanks for having me.